Hello, I am the Dungeon Tutor. Welcome. Since 2016, I've been answering your questions, giving advice and inspiration to countless gamers. Here, you can ask questions in the comments and get your own videos as an answer. So I encourage you, enjoy by all means. But come back to visit with your friend, the Dungeon Tutor. Hello friends, I am the Dungeon Tutor. Welcome. Today is day 14 of RPGaDay, and that means it's the 14th topic, which is mystery. Okay. Mysteries are certainly something that comes into contact with role-playing games. A great mystery leaves your players feeling elated, exhausted, like they've come up against a personal challenge and overcome it. Especially if you do something that makes them actually work to solve the mystery. If it's all resolved with a bunch of dice rolls, your character's doing what they're already really good at, there's no personal investment, there's no personal gain, or very little. But when you actually take the players and you invite them into your mystery so that they can pursue leads, they can find clues, then you've kind of transformed things into something a bit more interesting, exciting for the players themselves. It used to be back in the day that when you succeeded in a dungeon, it wasn't because your character had great stats or the right skills. I mean, yes, it was good to have the right powers that helped out, and knowing how to use those was certainly a big deal, but your character was your playing piece. You gave them their wits, you gave them their ideas, and they would launch off from there. They lived and died because of your decisions, and that was a good thing. You could keep your characters alive even though there was a lot of challenge, there was a lot of conflict ahead of them. And you would manage this because, well, in short, you would do it because there was a challenge for you yourself, not just the characters. And that's important. And that's something that can easily be overwhelmed. So I'm going to give you my tips on how to present a mystery for your players. And it's actually quite simple. First of all, you have to decide if you want the possibility of a bad ending. This can happen if you put in a scenario and the players just do not go down the right leads. They fritter away time. Things don't go well. So there's a couple of things that I do that I'm going to pass on to you now that you might find helps. Okay. So number one, come up with the central premise. What is the mystery? Is it a murder mystery? Probably one of the most common kinds in role-playing games. Is it trying to solve a phenomenon that's going on? For example, a good ghost story where the players find out about a ghost and try to, let the ghost pass on by taking care of whatever unrequited passions they had. Sure, you could try that. That's certainly been a popular one over the ages. I do recommend it. It's a good one. But there's plenty of others. Anytime there's some wrongdoing or something that's going on that people might not like could be a source of a mystery. So you need the central theme, right? You need an idea. We'll just go with murder mystery as the most basic one, the whodunit. So, to do a mystery, you start from the end of it, which is the actual murder, and you work back to the players. The players will go through that in reverse. They will eventually get to the point where they uncover and finally see what happens at the murderer's end, you hope. So, let's just say the murder victim is the crotchety old mentor of one of the players' characters. Murdered, dead, and cannot be brought back from the dead unless somebody finds out what happened to his soul. Because his soul's gone. It's been taken. Which immediately implies that this was not just some random killing. Let's throw in some clues, right? How about we throw in a big one, how he died. If the players examine the body, they would look for injuries. What if there are no injuries? What if he died by either magic or something that caused him to straight up die? Poison. Maybe poison. And even in primitive days, there were ways of doing some sort of toxicology. Clearly, there's a spell called Detect Poison, I think, in most versions of Dungeons & Dragons, at least, and many other games have that too. You could use magic for that. But there's other ways. And if you're thinking about the whole setup and clues, these are clues. For example, a swollen tongue may indicate some sort of an alkaline poison that had been ingested. Blackened veins that can be seen through the skin are a sign that the blood has been corrupted by some sort of a poison. Then you have to think, was the poison or was it venom? There's a difference. Poison's something that you eat or, have inflicted. Venom is injected, like a venomous bite. And their symptoms are a bit different, but both of them can lead to all kinds of very bad things, including death. So how did that happen? This could be your first clue. If it's an animal that killed with venom, then the murderer had to have access to a venomous animal that could administer such a deadly effect. Now the players have something to work with, especially if they are crafty in nature and the skills of animals. They might be able to start picking up some clues, or at least eliminating some possibilities. And that's really what you're starting at this point, is at the beginning of things, they should be eliminating. By process of elimination, they can come closer and closer to a list of applicable suspects. So, I find that once you have the murder down, and the murder itself gives a clue or two, then I work backwards. I start figuring out who did it, who legitimately killed them. And you can do those two alternately. For example, if you decide the soul is gone because he was killed by a powerful necromancer, that's not a minor ability. That's a major power, and not everybody has access to that. So you're going to be eliminating a lot of suspects if the players look to that as what happened. But what happens if we don't want necromancy to be the answer? Soul's still gone, though, so we need to figure out a way for that to happen. Poison doesn't naturally evict a person's soul. It just kills them, so their soul moves on. But in this case, that's not the case. It's no longer accessible. Speak with Dead won't work so that they can find out who killed them. Again, we're using D&D as an example, but there's other means and sources, of course. So, dead body, no soul, killed by venom. We'll go with that. All right, so somebody killed them with venom, and maybe we can identify the nature of the thing that killed them. Maybe we find 2 injection marks implying a venomous bite, which might imply that the creature could have been a serpent, for example. Interesting option. And it brings to mind Sherlock Holmes and the Speckled Band. That was an interesting mystery-ish, almost as much adventure, but still showed Holmes at his best. And yeah, okay, so snake bites person. How? Well, was it the druid who can turn into such a creature and deliver a venomous bite that would have killed that person? Maybe. But maybe the old mentor was too powerful for most natural venoms to kill them outright. That's certainly the case if they were an advanced adventurer. So maybe that wasn't it. Maybe he was affected by poison to the effect that he died with the poison state still upon him, but something else got him. Pretty likely if, again, he was fairly powerful. So now we have tandem attack. Who else has access to serpents and the like? Well, there are rangers, sure. Creatures usually don't deal in souls, though. Could be any spellcaster. Spellcaster may have had some creature charmed, perhaps, or a familiar with poison. It's possible. To that wit, we are going to think about it. But unfortunately, having a wizard be the risk is something that's kind of unsatisfying when you're dealing with that. Some sort of a spellcaster almost is implied by the fact the soul's missing. Somebody would need to cast a spell and siphon out the soul or use some sort of a magical item, many of which are locked to spellcasters. So, how are you going to twist that? Well, there's other creatures that deal in souls. There are plenty of other creatures that could potentially deal in souls, and some that we know do. Devils and demons, for instance. Aha, we can turn this infernal. Now somebody might have an infernal backer who snatched the soul before it actually got to depart for the afterlife. Or at the very least to get in line to go on to the afterlife. That is certainly possible. In which case, kind of like that idea. So, okay, we have whoever killed the mentor poisoned him with a snake, which then allowed him to be killed by some sort of a demon or a devil. Aha. Now the question comes down. We're not going to we don't need to worry about the blow by blow by blow, okay? If he's wounded, a devil might be able to come along and snatch his soul. We can grant it the ability to do that, certainly in all of the infinite size of the hells, such a demon probably exists. Okay, fine. So, we know how it happened. And the players are going to have to figure out how it happened too. We need clues, right? So, perhaps the mentor has a brand on him, an infernal brand, that a little bit of looking could find. Now we've revealed the occult. Too obvious? Maybe, but it depends on the resources of your players, of course. The demon would probably leave some sort of a mark if he, A, killed him and took his soul. That's not unreasonable again. So that's a clue that we could put that the players would almost certainly find. But that just reveals the nature. That's the smoking gun, as it were. And the fact they had to work for it helps build the accomplishment of the players, which isn't a bad thing. But now they have to think, okay, our quarry has the services of some sort of poison that can weaken a person, and then a devil or a demon to snatch one's soul from their body. Okay? And we as a game master now are presented with that conundrum. Who would do this? Who has this power? Happily, this could be pretty much anybody. You could put this underneath anyone who is just playing as a guise, who aren't really the person they pretend to be, but portray this in such a way that the players don't question them immediately. Now, such a secret would be hard to keep for very long, so yes, ultimately those people are going to be betrayed under scrutiny. The players deciding throughout whoever they're investigating, whoever they're talking to, that the guilty party is the person that they talk to at some point. Maybe not led directly to them, but now you have to think, okay, this person's a diabolist. They're under the sway of either a demon or a devil. Might want to think about which. A demon would be crafty, calculating, and hey, got soul. I win. The demon is about destruction as much as anything, so they might have a reason to want that particular mentor out of the way. Now we're thinking about reasoning and plot and motive. Important elements of any sort of a murder mystery. Oftentimes the way that the party might lead to the actual guilty culprit. Who had the motive? And now we have to come up with that motive too. Is it because of an ancient grudge? Or maybe even a recent grudge? Is it for love? Oftentimes that may be the case. Passion and love, jealousy. You can take your pick of vices. I'll generally, in terms of murders, greed is usually a pretty big one. Rarely is it where money isn't factored in somehow in acts of violence. And that certainly could be the case here. The mentor had something, somebody wanted it, so they killed him. And doing so meant that an irrevocable strike that they thought to cover up by using an arcane means, like poisoning him to lower his resistance so the demon could take a soul. Yeah. And by the way, in fantasy, if there's magic around, a person who kills someone has to take those kind of measures. It's a smart person who makes it so that a simple third level spell to conjure somebody and they say, hey, who killed you? Yeah, you have to work around that if you're going to make a good mystery with players that have characters that are capable of doing such things, of course. If they're first level and second level, then nothing to worry about. But these are things you might consider. All right, well, cool, but now we still have, where do the players going to end up starting this whole thing? Well, of course, they might be the people who come across the body. They might go to visit the mentor and find them dead and no soul. Okay. So, if that's the case, then you don't have to worry about exposition bringing the players into things. They find it with their own two eyes. That means that you're going to have to fill in all the details about the surroundings and any other clues that you wish to dredge up then and there. You're not going to have somebody else come in and tell them how it went down. You're going to have to actually answer that yourself. So make sure that you understand what happened so the players can recreate that by investigating, by doing the research, by piecing out the puzzles that you put in place. And as they do that, work backwards. All right, now they're going to do some research. After they find out that that's how he died, if they find that out, then they might start investigating by going out and talking to people. You need to give them some people to talk to. It doesn't have to be a huge amount. You have to have an entire town or entire village. 5 people who could be suspects. That would work. Then you can let the players eliminate them one at a time. Relatively straightforward, but if the players are properly suspicious, they might really work hard to not eliminate people at the risk of eliminating the guilty person. That's good. It's a type of paranoia, but it can be paralyzing. Another thing to think about when you're doing a mystery is timeline. You don't want the players to have an infinite amount of time until the time where it becomes a cold case. Either the actual villain could move on, the players might lose the divine mandate of heaven to solve this issue, and events may circumstance themselves to just take it out of the players' hands, which is all fine, but giving the players the opportunity to give them a fair chance, that is important. So a timeline of things that are going on while this mystery is being investigated, not a bad idea. And also a great opportunity to drop clues. As things get exposed to the light of day, clues might pop up through no fault of the players, especially if they're not good at investigation. These are all elements of a good mystery. If you are predisposed to let your players solve this mystery, you'll want those kind of clues. You'll want things that will call out to the players as well as to the characters. So if one of your players really loves mysteries, you might want to drop elements of real life into those. For example, again, that toxicology thing, yeah, you don't have a toxicology kit in something like a fantasy age game. You don't have that. But your character might have a skill allowing a roll to test against to see if they notice the telltale signs of poison, which they may be in a very real position to actually notice. And that is something useful to bring to your mysteries to make them more compelling. The final thing, of course, that's really important is you do those step by step by step. Create multiple paths, multiple opportunities to get clues. Maybe a few red herrings to frustrate them, but I go light on those. Players hate, feeling like they didn't finish it. Feeling like it was all over and done and there wasn't anything they could do. By the time you've done several locations, had several NPCs for them to interact with, and you've worked from the back forwards to show how things went, to give the players the chances to ask the right questions and to solve it. Needs to be some sort of a denouement. There needs to be some kind of a closure, and then an answer. Now, obviously, the closure is usually confronting the big bad evil guy, or the criminal, the villain, whatever. It may also be a bad ending where they find the wrong person, and eventually they're proven to be wrong, which, yeah, that can happen too. But after the whole thing finishes with a good murder mystery, you should have some sort of a finale. Like I said, the denouement, the absolute end, and what happens next, to kind of bring the players back down. And that could be, if they were successful, they found the guilty party, and perhaps they bested them in a final conflict. Not always necessary, but maybe you wanted it. Then they get the approbations of successful investigators. They get maybe a reward. They get huzza'd. Or maybe there are other consequences they didn't anticipate. They found that the richest man in town killed somebody, and he is brought off to prison. But he employed half the town, and now he's gone. And the people who were left after him aren't so good at that. Maybe it's a major disaster for what they did. Maybe they had to deal with that and knew that before they put the finger on him. You can be very complex. You can have a lot of fun with mysteries. They can be very exciting and often make great side quests, especially when the players don't see them coming. But highly recommended you look into mysteries. Think about how you yourself could actually spice up your game by adding a mystery in there. Doesn't have to be trite, doesn't have to be cliched, and it doesn't have to be of any grand scale. Nobody's life has to necessarily be missing. If somebody just puts "the king smells like poo" on a wall, and the king is incensed and wants to find out who did it, that's a mystery. If the players can figure out the person, the frustrated halfling merchant, for example, who wrote that's the worst curse they know. They're just really good people. Then maybe, the players have to be justicars. They have to figure out what is justice. If we turn him in, the king will probably have him flogged, whipped, and maybe even imprisoned for a while, which is way beyond the scope of his crime. We have to decide, do we turn him in or not? It's interesting. You could do things like that, and it can be a lot of fun. I know there are people out there who have players who don't like mysteries. They don't like puzzles. But just every once in a while, it feels really, really good to be put to the test and found to be sufficient to it. It's a good feeling as a player when you solve the mystery because of your work. And ultimately, if you pull it off as a game master, you can have a lot of fun with that. So, it's just some simple ideas I have. I hope you liked it. And I have plenty more to think about and talk about as we go on, but if you like these elements and you've done a really good mystery yourself, by all means, leave it in the comments. We'd love to read about it. Or anything else you'd like to talk about in the comments. It would be great and might actually create a new video for you. So, until that next time, thanks for showing up. I appreciate you. And I hope to see you again. That would be nice. If I do, I hope that between that time and now that you get a chance to roll some dice, play some games, have some fun, but stay safe out there, friends. Until that next time, farewell.